Hello and welcome to the RANsquawk Weekly Wrap-Up video. I'm just going to take a moment to answer a couple of the questions that you sent in this week to the desk. The first question is about US corporate earnings season. So in the previous video we had started to talk about what we were going to see this week. So what we have seen is some rather solid, if unspectacular, performance out of US corporate stocks. So in terms of some of what we've seen, we've generally seen some pretty solid numbers from Dow stocks. In particular, we saw good numbers from McDonald's, Verizon and AT&T. All these companies posted a beat on both their earnings and on their revenues. We've also seen some pretty good numbers from US banks. However, there has been some confusion over the accounting procedures that we've seen from these banks, with some of their earnings not really able to be related to consensus estimates. However, this week has seen outperformance in those financial stocks. So in terms of what we're looking forward to next week, we'll be focusing on the big energy names. In particular, we have earnings from both Chevron and from Exxon. We also saw last week Apple miss on their earnings for the first time since 2004, so their stock has suffered somewhat this week and is back trading below the $400 a share level. Also coming up next week we have the US GDP figure. So this is expected to post an improvement, with the initial consensus for around 2.3% annualized. However, a couple of banks have been expecting a number in the high 2%. They are noting that we're seeing an improving in terms of inventories. So we're seeing some, in particular in the auto firms as well, with Ford and General Motors both posting good auto sales recently. So auto sales are expected to lead the drive in the improvement in US GDP. And finally, we move on to the eurozone. So this week has been a pretty headline-driven week. We've seen some quite explosive moves in both directions in the markets on the many eurozone headlines that we've seen. In particular, they are usually related to the EFSF. So this weekend does see an EU summit regarding the EFSF. In particular, it's likely to see a meeting between German Chancellor Merkel and the French President Sarkozy. So the German-Franco relations this week have seemed to committed to a final decision on Wednesday next week. So they've split the summit in two. They're then expected to present the results of this from Wednesday at the November 3rd G20 meeting. So this is seen as the unofficial deadline for the Eurozone measures. So in terms of what's expected to be agreed, there's details are rather sketchy at the moment. In terms of what is expected is a private sector involvement haircut to be increased from the 21% agreed in July, and sources are expecting a figure between 30 and 50%. Also expected to look at the EBA stress tests, so we don't really have a set date for those yet, but they are expected to look at some figures for recapitalising banks. There have been a lot of different talks regarding the size of this. Some people note around 60 billion euros to 100 billion is the initial estimates, particularly due to a story out of the FT. However, some large US corporate banks are noting that a figure close to 200 billion euros may be necessary. The other thing to look out for is the expansion of the FSF, in particular the size. So it has been noted, according to senior EU sources, that this may be around 1.3 trillion euros. However, we don't have any firm details on that yet. So in terms of what to look out for, Sunday does see the initial meeting between the Eurozone finance ministers. However, we're not expecting too many great details on Sunday, with the real details expected to be formally announced on Wednesday. So Wednesday is really the key day to look out for there, with it being signed by the G20 leaders on November the 3rd. So that's really what to look out for there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's been useful. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday morning at the usual time, 6:30 London time, when the RANsquawk desk reopens. I hope you have a great weekend.